Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Well, thanks for joining, listeners. I'm your host, Bryan O'Rourke. And in this episode that I'm going to share momentarily, it's the recording of my recent SIBEC webinar on key trends. And there are 12 of them for 2025 in the global fitness industry. You're going to note in the show notes that there's a link to the actual content itself so you can see it. And I hope that's helpful. Additionally, just to let you know what those trends are, there are 12 of them: emerging programming, GLP-1s, longevity and health, authentic experience, human capital struggles, digital fitness, finance and M&A, AI myths and realities, personalization, self-service solutions, the cost of hesitations, the impatience economy, and finally, marketing, creative, and CAC. I hope you find this interesting. And before we start playing that webinar for your listening enjoyment, I want to wish everyone a wonderful holiday, a great December. We're going to be sharing a number of thought leadership decks and interviews in the weeks to come and next year. And it really is I'm so incredibly thankful to all of you for listening in. If there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn or bryanko'rourke@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's join the presentation. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate the chance to visit today about some of my thoughts about trends. Our landscape is in flux, both in the near term and the long term. Before I go much further, I must apologize. I'm suffering from a bad cough, so if I have to pop a lozenge in my mouth, don't be surprised. Anyway, I'm very optimistic about the landscape for many reasons, but there are also challenges. And I think we need to consider what we're going to be doing in the year ahead and beyond to overcome those challenges and seize some real opportunities. When we think about trends, we need to both think about micro and macro trends. Has anyone forgotten about the metaverse, for example? Microenvironments relate to specific business issues. They tend to be able to be controlled, and that's a good thing. Macroenvironments are more external, like globalism, and we can't control those as easily. These include political issues and other market conditions. Consider Tesla. Musk said 8 years ago, self-driving cars would be a thing, and they still haven't become one, at least for Tesla. But consider Waymo. They're actually executing driverless robotaxis. And Lyft and Uber stock corrected significantly last week when it was learned that they would be entering the Miami market next. So when we consider trends, we need to think about our promise, what the execution of that promise is, and our perceptions. Remember the metaverse, anybody? And that's why trends are important to keep in context as we look at the fitness industry. Of course, during the past 5 years, I've spoken extensively on macro trends and the convergence of these 5 key trends and what their impact will be in the long term for the industry. Globalism, we are becoming and have become a global industry. Demographic shifts toward aging, values and belief systems, technologies, of course, and economics. The convergence of these 5 dynamics are creating many different outcomes. Today, for example, I won't be exploring sustainability as a near term. It is a longer term picture. However, for anyone in business today, They know that sustainability is a real issue that's being wrestled with by many different organizations. But the good news is, in the macro view, we have fantastic tailwinds because of chronic illness, primary prevention, public policy, and the belief that wellness and fitness will have an impact on these in the long run. Today, we'll focus a little bit more on macro convergences of 5 key trends, and I'll show you what the time frames of these things should be considered to be. Things like services, human capital, design, platforms, and economics. We'll focus on 12 key trends in 2025 that will be reflective of this, and these will also connect back to the idea of how trends can kind of merge across timelines. The good news in micro trends is that through the McKinsey report, as many of you seen, people are spending more on fitness and wellness. This is a near-term dynamic which is helping to continue to grow the industry, particularly amongst young people. We also have fantastic tailwinds from a micro perspective as it pertains to gyms themselves and facilities, where consumers in the U.S. still see, 60% of those consumers still see gyms as a central point for their fitness. So we consider macro, micro, and today, this is how I look at trends, and I think you should look similarly. So we have optimization today, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We have micro trends, which you're looking at around a 10-year, give or take, or 2-year, give or take, dynamic, and then more macro trends, which moves into a 5-year window, and then the futurist view, which is generally 8 years plus. This is how we need to consider trends in general when considering what is actionable for the businesses that you all are operating today. Trends also need to be taken into context given the maturity of the industry we're in. This industry remains fairly fragmented. It's a fragmented delivery system with winners and losers and real channel conflicts that are going to have to be thwarted out over time. Today's world represents a consumer that is surrounded by a wider range of choice: intermediaries, digital, equipment, communities, and facilities themselves. And these different participants can play direct to consumer through other channels and in different ways. For you as an organization, you need to consider these trends from the construct of what your constraints and capabilities are. And I would take this kind of trend-setting information and use it in my planning processes, considering short, midterm, and long-term objectives. Also, we must all realize that these trends mean different things to different participants. Risk and return aren't the same for everyone that is participating in the industry space. And in general, innovators are a very small part of the industry. And so not everyone can throw care to the wind and try a lot of incredible innovation because there's a high degree of risk. Generally, the risk-return dynamic reflects this kind of share of market and competitors, where we see early adopters and innovators being about 15% of the market, with early majority and late majority being about a third each. Most people on this call are going to lean toward early majority or late majority. So even though I may say some things in here that are trends, not all of them are going to be choices you're going to want to make, given your business dynamics. So today, we're going to try to get into some actionable insights as well after we identify the key trends. And here they are. I'm seeing for 2025, 12 things to keep your eye on that I really would encourage you to consider evaluating in your business planning for 2025. Let's dive in. First, kudos to the Pure Gym folks, in the UK for their annual report that was just released, identifying emerging programming, which is my number one trend to consider. They did a research on Google searches for the UK market, and this is what they found people were most interested in. First is remote personal training. This is representative of a hybrid model, some pure digital model. Year over year, search for that was up over 400% of the UK market, which is a fairly mature market and reflects many global trends. High Rocks, of course, with now over 200,000 global participants, really reflecting community with their events and competition, and interesting programming array, a fantastic and widely popular growing delivery system. 30-30-30 of Tim Ferriss fame, which is nutritional integration. 30 minutes in the morning, have 30 grams of protein, and 30 minutes of steady-state cardio. And quadrobics, which is the animal movements, crawling, etc., non-equipment oriented for programming. And finally, virtual fitness, which continues to be relevant and which we're going to talk about in digital fitness, our fifth trend that I'll talk about today. An honorable mention as well to Pilates, which is really enjoying a continued surge in programming. So this is my first trend in the market. And finally, around emerging programming is strength. Facilities continue to realign their offerings around strength training for obvious reasons, the increased appreciation of the science around strength training and its appeal to a wide array of demographics from youth to older because of the retention of muscle and its importance in longevity. Next is GLP-1, not surprising. These drugs are just the tip of the iceberg of what is coming out in the world in the future. We see it impacting healthcare systems, consumption of food products and alcohol, and finally lifestyle. Everything from Trojan and Bumble all the way to Tinder and Peloton and Victoria's Secret. The ripple effects of GLP-1s are really an interesting dynamic with 6% of U.S. citizens presently under the therapies and 12% of U.S. citizens at some point having tried GLP therapies. Of course, as the number 2 trend goes, it hasn't been without participants seeking opportunities. Most notable is Optimize from Equinox and its $40,000 health and fitness program that incorporates blood samples and different treatments, as well as Lifetime's Miura, which is another example of lifestyle and longevity trends and services that provide a premium price and integrate these new solutions into a holistic longevity product. As I mentioned before, GLP-1 agonists are just starting, and there are an array of drugs that are underway in clinical trials now. So this is really the tip of the iceberg, from bitter taste compounds to lean muscle boosters and bacteria, along with peptides and other treatments. I expect to see quite a lot coming to market in the next few years, and I continue to see clubs figuring out ways of delivering programming to serve this marketplace and integrating these solutions into overall fitness and longevity services. Number 3 is authentic experience. Some of this I like to call anti-badtech. This comes from Accenture's report and survey of consumers in 2024 this year. And the first one is mediocrity. You can read here, app designs, other aspects of technology have really eroded creativity and has given people kind of a bad taste in their mouth. So I think it's important for everyone to do an audit of what their customer journey really is, with as much independent views to that point as possible. And I'll share a little bit on that at the end of actionable steps you could take. Humanization related to this is another very important thing. People feel like technology is happening to them instead of for them. And so they're starting to question, how are they using technology? So it's not alienating them, it's actually leveraging humanization. As we see in later trends, this is connecting to other dynamics in the industry at large, and I think you'll find those things interesting as well. The Accenture survey also shows that when it comes to top categories and people want face-to-face interaction, over 48% of those see fitness centers, diet, and nutrition experts as being a very important part of what they see as being important to be authentic. As well, it's hanging out with friends and spending time in nature. So programs that include outdoor, providing social interaction places for people at clubs, this really speaks to the authentic experiences trend that people should be paying close attention to. The next point is employees. Hiring and keeping great people is becoming a bigger and bigger challenge. And in 2025 and beyond, we've really got to figure out how are we going to broaden the appeal of working in the fitness industry. We've gone through a decade of deconstruction where traditional life paths are being rerouted, people are rethinking what's important, and there's a search for trust and meaning by employees. It's not as easy as just paying people money and telling them what to do. The struggle for human capital is very reflective of a real world labor shortage happening in our industry space with economic realities of pay and what people need to receive in compensation, not just meaning, to actually live a sustainable life. People are searching for trust and meaning while organizations are battling on how to rebound from a COVID dynamic that really impacted the workforce. And you can see in these different surveys how employees see working for companies. Company culture matters, and 72% say so. And so it's really, really important for organizations to consider how are they going to attract capital, some of human capital. Some of these dynamics also feed into other trends I'm going to bring up, including digital and self-service. The fifth trend for 2025 people should keep in mind is digital fitness. A lot of this is reflective from people actively seeking self-care and practice. And right now through this survey, you can see people have priorities for managing weight, lifestyle, fitness, mental health, socialization, and many people are relying on digital tools to help them do that. Despite the humanization trend, for example, myself and others I know, we track our health behaviors. 40% in the UK alone of people monitor their health matrix daily, no matter where they work out. Apple has 745 users of their subscriptions accounts that include fitness, servicing 1 billion devices. The tracker market is still growing, and new services that I'm going to show you in a minute as we talk about AI and other dynamics will further fuel this drive for digital. Another interesting thing, and this comes from Europe Active's fantastic report with Deloitte, it's also what consumers see as far as digital in facilities and how important it is. You can see in the darker green, it shows what people in Europe were making use of when it comes to technology, and the lighter green is what they desire. So there's still a long way to go in the adoption of tools that are readily available to create better experiences for members in models around the world. For example, class bookings in advance, according to the European survey, 40%, 39% used them, 63% want to use them. That's a gap of 62%. The same with digital on-demand classes, digital membership administration, all these online coaching. You can see 26% used it and 55% would like to use it. So there remains opportunities in digitization in facilities today that still have not been fully realized, reflecting that innovator, early adopter graph I showed you later or before. Further to the report that Europe Active and Deloitte shared with the world earlier this year are the practical uses of digital as a bridge connecting different modalities. A lot of high-end users in clubs both work out at home, outdoors, and in clubs. Digital tools help people self-monitor their health while they adopt various strategies. So our folks at MyZone or other different solutions that allow people to track those things and get real-time information that they use to manage their health and fitness become even more relevant in the world today as people utilize their fitness experiences through a variety of different means. Number 6 is finance and M&A. You know, I see a very active marketplace. As you can see, the Blink acquisition by Pure, it's becoming more global. And there are a lot of dynamics at play with respect to finance, M&A economics. etc. There still remains a great deal of capital on the sidelines in private equity. We saw the Orange Theory Anytime Fitness Essential merger by O'Rourke to realize further synergies in those companies and create a huge behemoth. That happened just this last year, in the last number of months. We see EOS Fitness out there attracting more capital. We see Solid Core's transaction with El Caterton, very active in the market. In the last week, we see TPG exploring a huge sale of Crunch. So there's a lot of appetite for expansion and really bolstering the scale of these organizations to meet market demand and deploy additional capital. We see similar dynamics on the supplier side, with Tomo Bravo's recent discussion about ABC Fitness and eGym's successful transaction, again with El Caterton and other partners. So there's a lot of money both on the supplier side and on the fitness delivery side. And we're going to see, I think, in 2025, even more M&A activity. Next, the subject we all love to talk about lately, which is AI. And I say in 2025, we're going to be facing realities as opposed to myths. I've talked about this before. You can see the Gartner cycle of adoption, the hype cycle. Right now, we're still largely in a peak of inflated expectations. All you have to do is try and use the new Apple Intelligence product. It's terrible. It's got a long way to go. So there's the hype, like you saw with Tesla, and the reality of the market. Doesn't mean that AI isn't important. It's a very important dynamic, but its adoption level with U.S. leaders is still very insignificant or relatively insignificant. I think it is overemphasized how many people are actually using the tool at present. And I really want to encourage you all to check out Carl Foster's recent article on this on LinkedIn, where he talked about, I hope I can pronounce this well enough, Carl and everyone, anthropomorphism, which is basically taking human emotions and attributes and applying them to non-human things. I see in the interim, as we're going to talk about shortly with eGym's Genius and other solutions, AI being, adopted in certain respects, but its true promise is still a number of years away. Capital is flowing into this arena, and I see really outside of 2025, probably a further window of a couple of years is intelligent agents, which can become some of the greatest behavioralists and motivators in the world for humans trying to become more healthy and fit. I also recommend highly Ted Vicky's recent book, The Fitness Professional's Guide to ChatGPT. In all of our organizations, we've actively used this tool, and if you use it well, I think you'll benefit from it in many, many ways. And Ted has given us great examples in this book, so again, I highly recommend you checking that out. Number 8 is the often discussed personalization. We will continue to see this as a focal point, although it's still not reached its potential. Generative AI is upgrading people's experience, but there's going to be some fits and starts in that regard, as I just mentioned. I think Genius from eGym is a great example of utilizing AI and self-service in a way that's integrated well from a user experience perspective. I think we'll continue to see in this year ahead personalization becoming a more effective delivery for many brands that understand what it takes to do it. Number 9 is self-service solutions. And this is a big deal. We often talk about humans versus people. You see humanization is a big point that people are seeking. And you can see the percentages from the survey where a lot of people don't want to be supported by a coach. Some desire to be around people when they work out, others not. Some don't mind training in a fully automated club without a staff, but many don't. I love to show people and remind them of the Apple experience, where you can buy their products and pick them up, have them delivered, or go to one of their facilities or stores and have a great training experience or talk to a human. So I think that the real depth integration of technology and humanization continues as an opportunity. We also see innovators like Crunch utilizing Amazon's solution with the Palm for access. And many of these things are really optimizations. And it's a great example of trends bringing service, the reduction of requirement for human capital, the importance of platform, user experience design, and economics coming together to drive the adoptions of these solutions. Number 10 is the cost of hesitation. And this is really a reflection of consumer distrust. People are becoming more and more skeptical. And so brands in 2025 better make building trust a big priority because people want to do things, they want to have experiences, but they've seen a lot more fake information. They've experienced deep fake attacks. They're very skeptical. I've mentioned the Edelman Trust Barometer report, which is annual. Innovation in peril was the theme this past year. It's very critical in 2025 that brands seek trust for their members because they're going to use that to make decisions about, am I going to do business with you or not? Number 11 is the impatience economy. And this is fantastic. People want solutions. They want them quick, but they also need trust. So for many people, the pursuit of health, wealth, and happiness, they feel slow and tiresome. Okay? We need to design better user experience while building trust to get people over the divide to have them buy. And this is a real dynamic in consumers today. Anything that a brand could do to make people's life easier, that they believe in, they're going to buy. And as you can see in the Accenture report again, 59.9% of people want long-term, reliable, convenient support for their physical health and 58.9% for their mental health. So this is real stuff, and it's a real opportunity for brands. Finally, marketing success. This is becoming a bigger and bigger dynamic as the monopolies of Google and Meta continue to drive up digital acquisition, and as AI is changing and impacting the SEO marketplace, and what tools and approaches used to work that aren't going to work anymore as well. So we can see some of these search everywhere domination, live and entertainment shopping, e-commerce platforms, content marketing tsunami. More and more brands are getting into content marketing. I'll talk a little bit about that. So there are many dynamics that are recreating the marketplace of how you market. I highly recommend you checking out Gary Vee's thoughts, which are always really thoughtful. And he really talks a lot about the dynamic of the interest graph and how that's changed everything and the importance of creative now in marketing, both for building, entertaining people, building trust, being relevant, and overcoming some of these obstacles like building humanization, building trust, getting in the way of hesitation, overcoming those boundaries to be successful in acquiring new businesses. The other thing are customers for their business. The other thing around this is being thoughtful about who you partner with when it comes to data. Trusting the algorithms of Meta and Facebook alone, or Meta and Google alone, or others, brings with it some risk. And there are a number of different companies out there helping people with other data sources that will make their targeting and CAC more responsive and more economically beneficial to their brands. So these are the 12 trends I wanted to share today. I greatly appreciate your attending, but let's get into a few final points before we move into Q&A. So remember the micro convergence trends that kind of reflect and drive these 12 trends we just went through. I think the question is, how do you action these now? And I have been encouraging brands and people to do this for some time. I think it's very critical for you and your company to identify touch points and moments of truth. It's an audit of what your experience is today that you're actually generating and delivering and how. What touch points represent is a harmonious blend of your strategy, your creativity, your design, your technology, and your intelligence that come together to create customer value, particularly in light of these 12 things I talked about earlier: programming, hesitation, trust, digital, all these different dynamics. And it's taking your touch points. And this is an example of awareness, consideration, conversion, management, and loyalty. And really very specifically auditing what you're doing in these regards for moments of truth, for bringing customers to you and keeping the customers you have. So before you can really even start juxtaposing these trends I'm telling you about, you need to start here and map out what exactly is going on today for you. And then really weigh that against your organizational constraints and capabilities. What are your risk and reward dynamics? Capacity constraints can be money. It can be organizational capabilities. It can be a lot of things. So taking those moments of truth, those touch points, comparing them to the trends, finding out where the areas of improvement are that you can realize in the near term and look to in the midterm should be a key driver of your planning for 2025.
Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryanko'rourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.